So welcome to the chaos that is my studio. It's full of stuff. Really should start getting rid of a few things. Anyway, today I'm going to record Ray Charles' tune called I Can Make It Through the Day. It's from his album Through the Eyes of Love from the very early 70s. And I love it. It's a mix of gospel and blues and soul. It's just right up my street. So what I've done is I've made myself a chord chart here. And I've done some string parts, and I've basically written out these things in order to get myself, you know, in some sort of order. So what I've done initially on the computer here is to record a drum loop just using Logic, and then put a keyboard part over. So I've got this. So that keyboard part, I've just stuck the chords down. I'm going to re-record it later, but it's just something for me to work to. Now, similar to the order in which I recorded things on my last tune, which was Living for the City, I'm going to record, I find the order quite helpful to put bass and guitars down, just get a good wash of rhythm and bass, and then stick some vocals down. So I'm going to start with the bass part. Now I've got this camera up here, which is an old iPhone 4, would you believe it? Which is actually preferable to me, partly because it doesn't record hugely high resolution, which is fine. It means my file sizes aren't too big. And it's also really good in low light. Better so than later models. I don't know why. But I'm going to record this first. This is my Fender bass with flat wound strings on it. So I've got to try and do this and try and do it all in one pass. It's a 4-minute tune, so feel free at any point to skip any chapter of this, but I just thought it would be helpful to go through exactly the processes of a recording session. So here we go with the bass line then. So one, two, three, one. Okay, so my bass is slightly out of tune with that record, with the piano there. I want basically, that's another reason for recording those piano parts, is that you can get every instrument absolutely in tune. Now I know you can use a tuner, here, but actually I think you get a much better result if you're playing and you can hear faults that are happening. So now it's 9:25 at the moment in the morning, which I know is not a great time for a recording session. It should be 9:25 at night. But I'm hoping that by lunchtime, so at the end of this film, I would have recorded most of the parts. And you can see the process that I have to sort of go through in order to get this down. So I'm just going to have another go at that bass part. I'm recording on Logic 7, would you believe it? A very, very old version of Logic, but I've found it to be immensely reliable. And it's never crashed. So, here we go. Okay, so bass, I'm happy with that. At the end, what I did was, in order to shut that final note up, I just bring my hand onto the string very gently, just to damp anything. Only when the sound has disappeared do I either turn the volume down or press stop. It means that you've got a really nice clean ending on all of your sort of string parts, any guitars or any bass or anything like that, that might have some sort of little noises at the end. Of course, you know, you can only go so far with this. I haven't sort of, for example, allowed for any of the sort of standard interferences that you might get. You know, things like buzzing from pickups and that sort of thing, which you should try and minimise, but you know, it's not always possible. So next, I'm going to put some guitar on with those chords. Now, at the same time, because I want to be quite gentle with the guitar, I'm going to turn those keyboards down a bit so that I can sort of hear myself think a little bit more. So. Do me. So I'm going to use the same. I'm plugging straight into the sound card with all of this stuff. You could, of course, get your guitar amp set up. Got any room? But also, there's that sort of. We now have that flexibility where you can change things afterwards if you so wish. If you wanted a Fender amp and then you decided you wanted an AC30, or you decided whatever, you can reamp things. And people used to do this. They used to record guitars dry to a tape machine along with the guitar amp track, and if they didn't like the guitar sound, they just play back the clean guitar through a guitar amp in the studio. The purists would say, how dare you do such sacrilegious things? However, you know, it needs must in a lot of ways. So I'm going to just put some guitar down now. So. Any little tuning errors are going to show, especially on a recording. They are going to show, so you've got to make sure that everything is really, especially with a tune like this, which is really, everything is very, very exposed. I know that keyboard's there sort of holding the fort at the moment, but I'm going to take that off, leaving a very, very sparse mix. I will put keyboards back on at the end, but it's all going to be very, very exposed. So at the same time, I'm just going to check that my bass camera worked. So I'm kind of having to do two things here. Obviously to sort of talk through the recording session, but also just to double check. Some bloke yapping on this camera. Okay, now I could change the camera angle for all of my instruments. However, I mean, you know, it's not really the point of it. I could change it very slightly just to, although the drums are in the background. So I have to think about a little bit about the pictures here. But I'm going to crack on and record some guitar. Now this is going to be, I'm going to start recording. And if it's out of tune, I'm going to stop. couple of things there. First of all, it's too loud in the mix. It is encouraging me though to play quieter, which is what I want. So actually I'm not going to turn it down all that much, but there was also some rhythmic error in there. When you're doing something like this, it's got to be so clean and accurate with that drum rhythm. So I'm actually going to turn the drums up slightly so that I've got something a little bit more prominent to play to. So just a quick check through that camera angle to make sure that the guitar is okay. Okay, that's good enough for me. So what I'm going to do is delete that take, and then so I'm just going to make sure the okay. So I should have I've only got the bass track. When you're coming to sorting your files out with this, you end up with gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of data if you're not very careful. So here's some guitar then. The reason I'm holding the guitar out of the way of the camera is so that the camera autofocuses correctly. hear those drums just continue going on. I just loop them rather than sort of program a sort of specific length of time. Just program them like that. So, don't know what to do now. I think the best thing for me to do is just to maybe put that amplifier, that guitar rather, through a little amplifier patch on the computer. So I'm going to just stick it through the standard Logic Zone 40-watt combo, the Fender. Just put it through a little reverb as well, just to try and spread it out a bit and make it sound. I want to go easy on the reverb in general, really, on these parts. I really like dry. I love dry drums. I think they should be dry. Of course, the fashions change, you know. But the 80s, there was this fashion for sort of gates and that sort of thing with lots of reverb. But for this, I'm also going to put a compressor, just a very gentle compressor on this, because I don't want the guitar to sort of be too spiky. Of course, it's going to change in the mix because I'm ideally going to just bring the guitar down a bit. So, I think I've got enough here now. I've got a keyboard, a bass and a guitar and drums to actually put some vocals down. So on the other recording that I did, that Stevie Wonder one, I did 2 guitars, but I'm just going to do 1 guitar on this because it's busy enough at the moment. It's a, you know, it's a piece of sort of gospel-y type music. Of course, it's about love, of course, as everything else is. So, where is my pop shield? Now, this is the problem. When you've got a studio that literally looks like a bomb's gone off in it. Hey, found it. So, I'm just going to turn this mic stand round a bit. Now, of course, if you have a bigger studio, this is never a problem. You can just set stuff up and leave it in situ. Part of the reason it looks so dreadful in here is that I've actually tried to get everything set up in advance of this session, so I don't have to do too much plugging in. So just move that floor tom out of the way. Now, a note of caution: when you are recording acoustic parts, make sure that your drums are nice and damped, especially the toms and the snares. So I'm just going to stick that cymbal case on it. I've got new books to read, but that ain't what I need. That's okay. I can't really hear any resonances going on there. So I've just got to set up my mic now. Let's have a look. So I'll need headphones for this, just to get the so that the sound from the speakers doesn't go through the mic. In a bigger studio, you'd have a separate control room where the engineer would sit and it would be all soundproofed, etc. But not here. Should have designed one. I got new books to read, but that ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. Oh, no, no, no. Now, you can, if you've got too many resonances in a room or echoes, you can use something like this, which goes round that. But this room is dead enough that I don't really need to use that. I take that if I go out somebody's... I do recording sessions in people's houses where I turn up with all my gear, and sometimes it's a nicer place for them to record because it's familiar and that sort of thing. So I have those sort of reflection filters and things just to help with that. Lots of people on my channel ask me about about sound treatment. And the answer is that there is so much maths involved that it's almost impossible to explain it, really. If you've got a room that sounds good, just go with it, use it. I know that seems slightly non-committal, but it's, it is true. So I'm going to set up the camera here just to get I'm going to bring the stand a little bit closer to it. Just lift that symbol up. As I say, any chapters that you want to skip, just go ahead and do that. If there's an instrument that you're more interested in for the purposes of this session, then go forward in time. You'll see that in the description box below. So let's do a quick check. I've got new books to read. So let's do a quick check on the camera angle. Make sure everything's all right there. I've got new books to read. Okay, that'll do. This place is a complete tip, but there's nothing I can do about it. Just gonna have a quick sip of tea before I start this. That's a good job. It was only just this side of drinkable. Okay. Got my words here. Now, ideally, you should know the words to a song if you're going to record it, because you can pour so much more emotion into it. You're telling a story. But my memory of vocals, my memory of lines is not particularly good. So I'm just going to find the place where I'm going to go from. There's no point in going from the beginning because there's an intro. Okay. So I'm just going to do a little check. I've got new books to read, but that ain't what I need. And this picture of you just want to. No, baby. And the postcards you send would never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Oh, I can make it through the day, but oh, please help me through the lonely nights. When I'm on my job, oh, it's not too hard. But when I go home and I'm all alone and I'm by myself, baby, hurt me. You know you're my crutch. I need your sweet touch. And it gets the night time again. Lord, when will it end? Oh, I can make it through the day. Yeah. And oh, don't know nothing about the lonely nights. Let me tell you something. Well, now, night, go away. Please hurry up, day. 'Cause my nightlight burns and I toss and turn. Oh yeah. Tell me what would I see if I turned on TV? Don't know what to do. Lord knows I need me some you. Oh, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me through. Oh, the lonely nights. Oh. Now the reason I carried on there and didn't stop to do the test, and I hadn't even set the camera running, so I have to do it again. That was idiotic. It was okay. There were a few bits. Never accept something. I mean, if that camera was still running, I would have had to wrestle with the fact that there were a few lines that were a little bit hurried there. Now, partly it's because I've got quite a lot of vocal in my monitor there. I just decided to keep going just to see what would happen. And in a way, I could keep that as a guide track, but it might put me off. So actually, do you know what? I'm just going to delete it. And it's quite nice with Logic or any other digital audio workstation where it asks you whether you want to get rid of something, whether you're sure. Just get shot of it. You know, if you re-record on a tape machine like on one of these here, there is no undo button. So think of it in those terms. Think, actually, I want to get rid of that tape. Just get rid of it. Not, oh, I'll keep it because there might be a few words that I can use. Just get rid of it. So I'm going to have another go, this time with the mic. And I'm actually going to bring the mic slightly closer to the camera, slightly closer to the mic, so that I've got more of a perspective of what I'm trying to do. I've got, just do a quick check on that. I've got new books to read. Now, if you're singing into a mic, the ideal thing is not to be holding an iPad. But I haven't got a music stand. I bought a music stand, left it at a gig. Bought another music stand, left it at a gig. Bought a third music stand, left it at a gig. So there's a sort of a pattern emerging there where I just thought, you know what? I think I'm not going to buy another music stand. That'll do me. Okay. So, find my bar 12, I think it was. There we go. Now, part of some of the words there, I was kind of rushing through and then ending up with large gaps. I mean, I know that the nature of that song is there are large gaps where you've got backing vocals and strings, which I'm also going to record. There's also an intro bit where he's talking, goes, "Girl, I'm so lonesome tonight." Only he can say that. I can't. I haven't. You know, I'm an English middle class. You know, I can't really. "Girl, I'm so lonesome tonight. I was just wondering, lying here, wondering where you are and what you're doing. And Lord knows the thing that worries me the most is who you're doing it with." That's why, if you don't mind, I'd like to sing these words to you. You see, it kind of doesn't wash. So I'm going to do this just the verses. I'm going to put something else in the intro. So, okay, here we go. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, 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 baby. The postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Oh, girl, make it through the day. Oh, please help me through. Oh, the lonely nights. Okay, so I don't want to hold this thing. I'm going to put it there and hope that it'll stay there. And I can just sing line by line and just glance over. So there's also that I've strained that top A flat. I can do that later on, but really what I need to do is to make sure that I grade this song just like I did with the guitars. Okay, it's all right. It's okay. It's reasonable. Okay, so just deleting the takes I don't need, so I should end up with, yep, only the guitar and the bass. Okay, so back to the camera. Helpfully on an old iPhone, where you delete something, it deletes it, period. It doesn't put it into another folder filling up your memory. So also I've got one ear off here with my headphone, so I can hear the acoustic level of my own voice. So I hope I'm not getting a cold. At least make it through this session. Girl, I can make it through the session. Get the joke. Okay. My funny joke. Okay, here we go. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, 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 baby. And the postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me through the lonely nights. When I'm on my job, girl, it's not too hard. But when I go home and I'm all alone and I'm by myself, baby, you heard me. You know you're my crutch. I need your sweet touch. And it gets night time again. Lord, when will it end? Oh, girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, you don't know nothing about the lonely nights. Well, night, go away. Please hurry up, day. 'Cause my nightlight burns and I toss and turn. Yeah, oh. Tell me, what would I see if I turn on TV? I don't know what to do. Lord knows I need me some you. Oh, I can make it through the day. Oh, ooh, 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 me through the lonely nights. Oh, oh, the lonely nights. Okay. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to keep that for the moment. I'm going to record other things. I'm going to see what that sounds like, because sometimes you don't get a really good impression of what's happening with those vocals until you've listened to it back a few times. And obviously we can economise on that by putting other parts down at the same time. So my next job, I think I've got enough material there to put the drums down. Now this mic is at the moment doubling as my vocal mic, but it's going to get turned back into a drum overhead. Now with drums, really there are the laws of this really mostly governed by the laws of physics, in that you want your overheads to capture a good stereo image of your drums, but you don't want phasing problems. Now what they are is, for example, all the energy of the snare drum will be literally sapped out of it if these mics here are not equidistant with that snare drum. So the way to do this is just to get a jack cable or something and just measure the distance between the overhead mics and, if I can get this thing untangled, there we go, the overhead mics and the snare. You just need enough cable to, I go pretty silly with my winding up my cables. So, jack plug to snare. The middle of the snare. Okay, this one needs to come in a bit. Now I do want a nice sort of, a general sort of, a nice sort of stereo spread. That's getting there. I would like a nice stereo spread of the drums, but I don't want things too close that I end up sort of, that you can hear the drums really direct. I want to hear some of the room in this. Now this room has got carpets on the wall, the ceilings and the floor. The walls, the ceiling and the floor. So it's dead enough for my purposes, but I'm not going to worry too much about these sort of early reflections or anything like that. I'm just going to set the drums up here. So I've got my bass drum, I think in channel 3, my snare in channel 4, and then the overheads in 1 and 2. I think that's how it works. So what I can do is I can just set them into record. Obviously be careful with this in the room if you are, that's left, that's right. Okay, so it's actually, yeah, kick, snare and overhead. So I'm going to label these up as well. When I'm mixing drums at the end, I want to be able to see what I've got. Notice I don't have any tom mics. It's not that sort of tune. Really. This tune is also one of the reasons for picking this song, is that it's in a time signature that is virtually unused elsewhere. It's in 9/8 time, so you end up with this. It's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So it's I love it. I think it's great. It's such great writing to do a gospel-y blues tune in this sort of, in that sort of time signature. So what I've done at the beginning, I've got 2 bars of a complete drum rhythm, which allows me then to fully get into the sort of the beat. We are at 56 beats per minute here, which is really slow. Now, the slowness of the beat, unfortunately, does contribute to any slight errors being essentially not very good at all, fairly catastrophic in in terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up this this camera here so that I can get all the drums in. There we go. I'm just going to do a quick test of that, sit at the kit and have a little bash over it. So, okay, so. Okay. So as I say, I'm playing to the drums that are on there, and I've now got my vocal part. So what I'm going to have to do before I start recording the drums is I'm going to have to make sure I've got... That's good enough. Okay, delete that. I've got to make sure that I've got a reasonably good mix here. So I'm just going to play it back from bar 12. I've got new books to read. Now, that vocal, I want to try and put a little bit of compression on it. Not much, because I want to maintain the dynamics of the song in general. I've got new books to read. Pain in my heart when we're apart, girl. Jeez. Now. When we're apart, girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me through. Lord, when will it end? Oh, girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, Lord knows I need me some you. Okay. I've got new books to read, but they ain't one. So artificially at the moment the drums are a bit higher in that programmed sort of drum beat, because that's what I want to hear most of when I'm playing along with this. I'm also worried about the fact that those vocals, that top note, is a little bit distorted on the input. So I might have to do another vocal part, but that's okay. That's okay. We just deal with that when the time comes. I'd rather get some drums down so that I can get rid of that loop that's playing there, because it's just making it sound very sterile. So I also, when I'm recording, I have the option to switch the monitoring off on my drum sounds here. Now, ideally, I would want to do that because I need to hear more of the internal kit sounds than I do of my own drum sounds. So I'm just going to have a little... I need a little bit more drums there. It's not too bad, but I just need to make those drums just going to put that through the drums through a little bit of a compressor, so it's all nice and high. So what I've done, if I just take the headphones out, that's the mix that I've got now. So, okay. Here we go with the drums. Take one of possibly a few here. So I've got to try and maintain the dynamics of what I've done with the guitars, and just in general the thing is climbing and building to that third verse. So let's make sure I press go on here. Okay, here we go with the drums, take one of possibly quite a few. Didn't even hit that. My first job now is to, just apart from stopping the camera there, is to just go back and just check my sounds, make sure it's going to be okay. So I'm going to, because you know, you can record a complete take, not really know what it's going to sound like, listen back to it, and it's not very, well, a bit like that vocal part being slightly overdriven on that top note. So I'm just going to take the drums away, the program drums, leaving mine. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. So, the other thing to watch out for, with this particular tune, the whole record, that Through the Eyes of Love album, is very dark sounding. Really, really dark sounding. There's not much top end on that at all. Really, apart from Mr. Charles's vocals. Everything else is quite sort of low, and it's really clever because it really does make that a tune quite a down tune. So I'm going to have to think about that when I mix this. So here we go with take two of quite possibly some more. Now, just check the placement of my... There you go. If I did that, I might be able to reach the thing. Okay, here we go then. So, drums, take whatever it is. Make sure that everything's quiet in the room, no cymbals or toms. They can keep going for ages, those. So, here we go. I'm hearing a little bit of crackling on this, and I don't know what's happening. Whether there's... Okay. There's a little bit of rustling going on with one of my inputs, and I just need to make sure. Now that could be... There could be a few things that are that's happening there. It could be that you've got... If you've got a second sound card, for example, or... you know, an audio interface that is connected. If you haven't got your clock right, then you'll get crackling through your audio interface. And what I've got at the moment, I can hear something, and that's with the It's because I'm listening to all of the input channels of my sound card, 8 of which come from another sound card which is sort of piggybacked onto it, and I'm hearing that sort of digital sort of clock noise, but I'm not hearing it now. So I'm happy with the drums so far, the sounds. So I'm going to give this a third go, and hopefully I'll get this. Now, this is a tune that doesn't feature drums at all. It's got to be 9/8. It's got to keep going and do its thing without any sort of frou-frou, no fills, or very, very, very basic ones at the very least. Not going to bother starting the camera again. I'm just going to keep going with a second take on that because I was a little bit rushing on there, on the drum parts there, the hi-hat. So one thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to turn the drums up very slightly, the program drums, just to give myself a bit of a better sort of reference point, so I really can stick with those 8th notes. Right then, I think my best bet at the moment, most of that I think was good. There were one or two little spots there, but actually, you know, it's a drum part. It's not programmed. And the question is there anything there that I would listen back and go, or something similar? So I think my best bet now is to put a little bit of a guitar solo-y track on, and then I've got to put Hammond organ, because, you know, that is a real feature of that record, is having the Hammond and the piano together. Now I've got an acoustic piano in my house that I sometimes use to record, but I'm not sure whether I'm going to use that or not. I've just got to decide. I don't want to overcook this record. I want to make this really, really dark. So you can have things on it, lots of things like strings and backing vocals, but they've got to be really, really subtle. So my next job then is to put a bit of lead guitar over the intro and little bits throughout, but I really mean little bits. It's not, you know, you don't want to take over with this thing. So I'm just going to put I'm going to have something sort of Vox AC30-ish. So, set up the camera. Might do an overhead shot of the lead guitar, perhaps. Let's do a quick test of that. So basically, this is how I do all of my videos. I don't do any sort of multi-camera shots. I used to take 2 shots of each instrument and found that I wasn't using the parts. So it's yeah, there's not really any point in, you know, going overkill on that, because when you come to edit, you end up with lots of gigabytes of data, 2/3 of which you would never use. So I'm just going to pull the sync lead out of the back of this sound card because it's annoying me. I'm still getting a little buzzing from somewhere, but hopefully it won't come out on any of my recordings. Take the snare off. I'm going to also supplement the guitar that's there with a little bit of the lead guitar, you know, like sort of oh, don't want to do that. Okay, so just a little sound check with this. So, now I've done the drum part, I'm going to mute the I'm going to mute the original drums, and I'm going to take my own drum kit down a little bit because it's quite a lot louder. But they ain't what I need, and this picture of you just want to. No, 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 baby. And the postcards you send never, never meant painted by heart. Okay, so here we go with a bit of lead guitar. Set that camera up. Now after this, I think I am gonna put a little bit of Hammond organ on, because it's one of those things that makes a record sound really expensive, and it's just that wash, that stereo effect is amazing to sort of it's just a nice thing to have. A little bit of setup time required, but there we go. Okay, that is moving. Okay, here we go. Okay, so already I'm going in and out of that vocal, which is not a great idea really. Not, at least not yet. And I've also got to get used to that 9/8 time to solo over, because that was a little bit sort of cat in a bag type affair there. But I'll give it another shot and see what happens. I'm also going to I'll just give myself one bar in, because you've got those intro beats anyway. Okay, it's getting there. It's still not what I'd really want to hear on the beginning of that record, but you know, it's okay. So I'm going to do that once again. It's getting better with the 9 feel, the 9/8 feel. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just want to. No, no, baby. And the postcards you send never meant Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Lots of the time, if I ever conduct a session where I'm engineering, or I'm, you know, on the talkback mic or whatever, very often people say, "Oh, I'm just going to practice. I'm just going to practice doing this. I just see if I can do it." And I always press record, because invariably, if you've got somebody who's not afraid, but somebody who's kind of apprehensive about the session and is kind of hoping that they can do a good job, hoping they can get something right, they're more likely to be really on it on take 1 than they would be on take 3 or 4 or even 17, where by that time basically people have had enough. You know, you just get this, "Oh God, I don't want to do this anymore." And it's horrible. It's a horrible situation to be in, where you've got somebody who is, you know, quite clearly getting a little bit stressy about the session. So next up, I'm going to record some Hammond. Now, I've got 2 modules here, 2 keyboards that can make a Hammond sound. I've got the Nord Electro, which is great, but I've got the Roland VK7, which is even better. And it's just, if I just lean down here, talk amongst yourselves for a moment while I contort myself into some sort of bizarre position to get this thing out. Now this really was the sort of the Rolls Royce of the Hammond clones of the 90s. I bought it new back in '98, I think it was, and it's a fantastic bit of kit. It still sounds good. You know, despite other things coming on the market, this is really, really nice, and it just gives me a really good, authentic Hammond sound. And you can vary everything from the distortion to the leakage of the generators, and you can do anything with this thing. Now, I've got a volume pedal that I use with it. So I can get a proper swell. You need that with a Hammond organ. You can't get away without it. Unless you're really handy with a master volume control, but you want to be having all the control over your drawbars and your Leslie speed and all of that sort of thing. So anyway, set this up. Now at the moment I'm not unhappy with those vocals, and I'm just wondering whether the distortion that I was getting is actually a problem or not. I don't know. It might be, but I've got to just going to hook a power lead off there. There we go, and then it'll probably fall on the floor. No, there we go. My studio doesn't usually look this bad. I can usually see the floor, actually, but yeah, on this occasion, because I'm trying to do lots of different things, I need to have everything set up, especially for the purposes of this film. I don't want you to sit there going, oh God, he's, you know, bored of this idiot just cracking on about nothing, desperately trying to fill time. And now I know what it's like to be a BBC reporter. Alright, so what I need to do is to just plug these two, always stereo if you can. Hammond should be in stereo. Well, period. It says mono output on here, but you wouldn't have that unless you were doing that whole 60s thing where you have the Hammond with no Leslie connected. That's a nice way of doing it. So, okay, so I need a stereo input, which is going to be 3 and 4. These are very high output level. The Roland Hammond organs. Oh, that is so. But you can just take the master volume down; it would be okay. The signal to noise ratio of the output of this is much better than an original Hammond organ. So don't worry too much about that. Right, and I've got to get really subtle with this in the verses. You don't want, I've got new books to read. You know, it's not that. It's kind of, I've got new books to read. Of course, I can mix this a bit better when I come to actually, you know, do the whole mixing thing. Okay, get a camera and get a slightly different angle on this. If you're videoing with an iPhone, always use the charger. I used to do gigs with somebody, and I said, "Oh, bring your iPhone and we can record the gig and, you know, do." And I said, "Bring the charger." He didn't bring the charger, and so the thing ran out of battery before we could finish the gig. And, you know, doing that is just a bit of a shame, really, because it could be so much better than that. Right, I need to make sure that I can get the entire keyboard in, because playing a Hammond organ involves much more than just the keyboard bit. It involves the full sort of control over the sound using drawbars. For some reason it's not seeing it. Now, like most studio musicians, one needs to go to the lavatory occasionally. So skip on to the next chapter. I'll be back in a minute. So, never ever do a take on something if you really need to go to the lavatory. So, okay, just do a little quick test on that. Make sure that's. Can't see too much of the fact that I'm carrying a stone and a half maybe. That's cool. Okay, that'll do. So I've got to work out how I'm going to make this work in a dynamic way so that it's just not overcooking things. The original is so clever. Okay, part of the problem I think at the moment is it's quite, the level overall is quite loud in here. You kind of want that, I suppose, for if you're trying to play quietly and to play something down, is to turn the volume up and then it makes you play even more gently. But if the Hammond is too loud with respect to the rest of the mix, it does sort of create a slight sort of sense of a slightly unrealistic thing. All I need is that. I've got 2 books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, no, baby. And the postcards you send never meant painting my heart. Okay, I think if I just had the volume of the Hammond down ever so slightly, I'm going to go for a take here and just see what happens. I think it's I'm into it. If you're not into something, if something is you're thinking, oh god, this isn't working, just find out what the problem is, go back to it, even if it means scrubbing parts. You know, if the drum parts are wrong, if the guitar is wrong, there's no point in punishing yourself by carrying on. So let's see what happens if I try this then. Okay. Be nice if I got the chords right. There's also no need to copy the original. It's very tempting to think, oh, the original, I love the Hammond organ on that, but the other. I'm going to get that bit, but then I'm not going to do anything else that's on the record. I'm just going to follow the chords and follow the instinct of what's gone on here. There's no point in copying a record completely with every single sound in place. I don't really see the point in that, because it's not encouraging musical thought. It's just copying. But anyway, I'm going to go for that take now. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Just rushed a bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to... part of the problem is that there are no subdivisions there. Ga, ga. So I'm kind of guessing a bit. Now because I'm recording obviously on my own here, what I've got to try and do is to get... I'm going to take a bit of the original drums. In fact, I'm just going to keep... I'm going to keep that and loop that underneath my... I'm going to keep that because I rushed that intro. So here we go, take 3. Okay. Hopefully those drums will keep me in now. Okay. There's a lot there that's kind of working, but I just need to be a bit more careful with the swell pedal, because at the moment the Hammond is quite dynamic, and maybe I want it to be less so. So what I could do is turn the Hammond down on my recording level, which encourages me to use less range. I also want to get that beginning sound really sort of real gospel-y. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to have a little clean up of my camera here, because there's also the risk with an I think it's 8 gigabytes, this one. It's not very it's not very memory laden, shall we say. It'll record for 3/4 of an hour easily. And this is a phone that I had years ago, and I keep my old phones, I keep all of them, if I need to do any multi-camera stuff. The camera that you're watching this on at the moment cost me 25 quid from the garage. And it's just one of those dash cams, and they're really useful because you can see the entire studio, especially in a small room. You can get all of a guitar take or bass or whatever. So here we go. I'm going to give this another crack. Oh, yeah, I'm talking about 9/8 feels there. Okay, so here we go. I'm all set up. I'm not particularly into that. I need to do it quietly. This is where you can become very stressed very quickly with this. So I'm going to stop that take, get rid of it. Sometimes there's that psychological thing. If you've got a camera running, or the red light is on the recorder, that it's somehow taking some of your soul away. So, chill, chill, chill. Okay. I'm into that. I think that was all right. Now, the next job is to record some string parts. Now, that album, this particular album, has got some great string arrangements and backing vocal arrangements. It's like sort of almost choral in their sort of construction, in terms of, you know, classic choral music, you know, sort of soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And I've written a few things that might go over this. Now, I've done some prep for this session, but it's all writing prep. So things like the string parts that I've got here. Now, at the moment, I've got all the verses with the strings that I've written out, but I don't really want to use all of them, because I think the first verse has got to be just really down, properly down, without getting sort of too, let's check I've stopped that. Yeah. Without getting too bogged down into sort of specific production and the mix. I need the first bit. I mean, I might even take the Hammond away from the first verse, perhaps. But you can edit that out if as long as there's no mistakes there. I mean, if you're having to edit out mistakes, they tend to be a bit more obvious, because obviously that's a point that you want your instrument to be playing. But if you've got something where you just want to get rid of that verse, or at least automate it down, you know, in the mix, then that's better. So so I need to check that I've got my violin in tune. Now, this is in A flat major, this tune, and I'm tuning to an A. Now, I'm going to use the same mic that I use for my vocals on this. So now, when you record string parts, what you want to do is to record the whole. You want to record this box. I mean, this violin was made in about 1880. It's a German, really nice bit of wood. But I want to capture all of it. So rather than just the bridge and the strings, I want to capture the wood. So when you've got a mic like this, you want that sort of thing. Now, at the moment, I have written parts for the intro, but I don't know if I want to use them. I think I'm going to come in on the second verse, just as it does on the original, because, you know, there's a reason for doing all this. So you need the production to sound really polished, and without any sort of let's check that. Oh, it's channel 1. That's fine. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to record a couple of parts. I'm just going to record the first, just as a test. I'm going to record the first chords along with the Hammond. So I've got a track ready here. I don't need my drums at all now. Sorry, the program drums. So let's see if this works. Don't know if that's going to work. I'm going to put the two other parts with it. I've written harmonies. So I'm just going to put the third part down. There was one mistake in that part as well, but I'm just experimenting with what it's going to sound like. I'm not sure it's adding anything. And in fact, you could even argue that something like this would actually take something away from what you have already. No, I'm not having it. Don't like it. It doesn't do anything. It just gets in the way. So, verse 2, it is. So, if I find where that... when I'm on my job, God, it's not. That's where I need to come. That's where I need to come in. Right, okay. Job's a good one then. Right, so I'm just going to make sure that I've got... Now, when you're recording string parts, now sometimes I record 9 parts. So if I've got 3 harmony parts, I'll record 3 of each. The reason being that I can get a good ensemble sound, but you would never do 2 of each, because if you've got very slight imperfections, which you would have with any acoustic instrument or any take, no 2 takes are the same. If you've got 2 parts, it's going to be more obvious that they are different players, that they're different parts than it would be if you had 3. You can also, with 3, you can send one to the left, one to the right, and one in the middle in terms of your mix, or you can have your parts going sort of high harmony, low harmony, medium harmony, low harmony, just as if you were a conductor standing at an orchestra. You've got first violin, seconds, violas, cellos. So you would have you'd have a natural balance anyway. If you're watching an orchestra or listening, you can certainly place stuff in your stereo image. Of course, this is, you know, modern. This is sort of, yeah, rock and pop music production. So, you know, it's kind of up to you here. So I'm going to just record one complete pass of verse 2 and 3. Now I'm going to record, I'm going to set the camera up here to do this. And just see, just check that I can... It also gives me a chance to practice the very high notes that I'm going to have to negotiate. But, you know, I've written this out. I've made my own bed, so I've got to just deal with it. Okay. Way. Tuning! 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 Okay, so. Quick blast through A flat major, and just double check the camera on that. Okay, double check that camera angle to make sure that I can see the violin itself. I jogged the camera slightly, but I'm actually going to go with this. I'm not going to worry about that. So this is verse 2, or bar 33 on the computer. Everything's been recorded to a click track. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to give myself 2 bars in. Whoa! Whoa there! Whoa there! That's just horrible. But I'm just going to double check my camera, and then I'm going to have a little practice. Now, you know, this is fine. On a session, you're going to want to get things right as, you know, first time. You know, time is money and all that. But at the same time, there will be necessary points in the session where you just need to go, you know. Okay. Okay, I feel a bit more comfortable with it. Slightly less uncomfortable, perhaps. A nice double negative just to set me on my way. So, here we go. Okay, so that was out at the top there, those notes. It's all right though, I'm getting into it. I'm going to... I think that it's going to end up being 9 parts. Now this is obviously going to take me a while. Maybe I'll record 3, listen to the mix and decide whether it needs 9. On the original record there were cellos as well, but I can't play the cello. So I'm going to have to make do with just violins. It's okay. So here we go. I'm going to do the same thing again. Of course, after every take when you're doing a mic, if it's a violin or something, we just stand there stock still for a couple of seconds until the engineers press stop. And then that means you'll get a really nice clean ending, and that makes it really nice. And you listen to the end of a song and it just, and it ends really tightly. That's really nice. So at the moment I'm happy with that. I'm going to try and do a middle part. Now, because of those high notes, I'm going to play all the 3 takes. I'm going to play those high notes, because actually there's no point in trying to harmonise those. I've written octaves here, but I don't think I'm going to do that because I'm working on the idea of 3 parts here. So I'll just stop that and double check before I go on. Whenever I record violin parts with a camera, I will only do... Yeah, that's all right. But just for the sake of it, just for the sake of getting maybe the more of the fingers of my left hand, because you can just see the bow and a bit of the... I'm just going to record this take as well, and I'm going to call it... okay, so this is middle part. This is middle part violin. So I'll just give myself another 2 bars. Okay, this is the middle part of the reading here, which is actually hard to do because you're not looking at the extremes. It's a part that's in the middle. Bad violinist blames his music parts. I know there's a lesson there somewhere. Said the troll. Okay. Another go. I'm just gonna, because I've got the... I've just got to treat that a little bit more gently. I could play it in another position on the violin, but I'm not going to. I'd rather torture myself with the second part violin. Take 2. Okay. Okay, that's going okay. In terms of the concept we're there, I've just got to re-record that. Now, violins, if they're out of tune, unison, of those top notes, it will stick out. It'll be just, you listen back to it and go, oh, God, why didn't I do that again? So, you know, we're only a couple of hours in here. I think we're about 1 hour 55. So it's not going too bad, but it just needs to go a bit better. So that you're not wasting time. I also got the tremolo wrong in one part versus the other. Okay, so okay, so here's the second take again, violin, second part. It's a bit scratchy on the beginning there. So, just so much to consider here. Now, at this point, I'm sort of trying to work out whether there's an issue with the mix. I'm going to try having the level up slightly overall, so that I'm not sort of I'm not having to listen out for things. It's kind of presented to me to play over. So violin 2, the second part. I don't know how many takes it is now. 4, 5. Okay, so I'm happy with that, and I think I'm only going to record 3 parts. I'm not going to do 9 because I'll be here several weeks. So I'm going to see, because those 2 upper parts were actually gelling quite nicely together, I'm going to see if the octave below works. Or maybe I could just put the octave below part just once only after I've done 3. I'll try the upper part. So these processes, you kind of have to sort of think very carefully about what you're going to do. I'm not going to bother with the camera now because I've got a take of that. So here is the lowest part. playing it correctly would be a good start. Okay, here we go again. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick listen in the mix now to see. I'm not going to put an octave below that, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So, just going to put my violin down. Now, there are, there's like a little a little sort of vocal chorus bit that just goes, "Those lonely nights." Now, on the Ray Charles version, he's not singing that line in the lead part, but I did. And I've kind of just considered that, really. But I'm just going to record, I've just got the lonely nights, the lonely nights. Because it's also, that particular line sounds a bit more, dramatic. The trouble is with mics like this is that they're so heavy that you end up with a the lonely nights. Okay, so I'm just going to try that. Just for speed, I'm just going to just hold the pop shield over. I might as well set a camera up for this as well. So where's, that's going to be where my mouth is. Okay, a bit higher. So I've just got to find where I'm going from. So I'm just going to take the Hammond down a bit now. Pain in my heart, we're apart, girl. Okay, so I'm just going to record, it's 4 parts, and it's just the lonely nights, the lonely nights. I could actually record all the parts in a line, chop them and put them underneath one another. But because it's quite a slow tempo, actually there's not really much to be gained from that. So, headphones. Okay, so the lonely nights. Okay, so I'm going to try and the lonely nights. Second part. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. What? The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. Hey! It's a good job it's still morning. The lonely nights. The top parts aren't working. Nights! The lonely nights! Nights! Maybe I could hold it on. The lonely nights! I'll do that. So I'll just try that again from the top. Maybe I'll do the bottom part. The lonely nights. It's easier if you're outside your vocal range, actually, to do those parts first, so you're not encumbered by anything else. The lonely nights. Okay. Backing vocals. The lonely nights. Second part. The lonely nights. Let's keep that word nights along a bit. The lonely nights. It also sounds a little bit better if it's not quite so dramatic sounding. It's a bit just it kind of cuts through a bit. Okay. I'm just going to, while I'm here, I'm just going to do another camera angle shot because all you can see is my red Dorset cheeks. And there's no mouth component there. Not that you want my gob all the time. So there's the mic. Okay, so backing vocals. The lonely nights, the lonely nights, lonely nights, the lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. Lonely nights. I'm going to do. I have to do all those again, actually. Actually, apart from the bottom one, because the chord is sounding a little bit too pure. The lonely nights. That would do it. Make it a bit more bluesy. Okay, so here's backing vocals second part from the bottom. tenor.
The lonely nights.
That's better.
The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights.
And the top part.
The lonely nights.
Okay, now, just to cheat, should I do them again? They are short enough that you can do them again. Because I could actually sing them a little bit louder the second time.
The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely nights.
Not sure about that bottom part that time. I'm going to do the bottom part again, but this time I'm going to mute the other parts so that I can, because it's outside my range, I can.
The lonely nights.
It's starting on that note.
The lonely nights.
It's making sure that you can get a real good impression of that. So here is verse 2, backing vocals at the end. So just one camera angle of this.
The lonely nights.
Hear that in context with the others. Okay, that's fine. They're actually quite high in the mix at the moment. And that's the only two. It's just the two, the twice, I think. Let's do a quick check on my... Yeah, that looks to me to be about right. No, there's one more at the end, but it's really, really quiet. So I could do something else a little bit. Actually, there are vocal parts at the end.
The lonely nights. Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, got to really be careful here that I don't trample all over that outro. Because that could very easily happen.
The lonely nights. Oh.
I've got to really hold on to those notes. And I don't want to put any vibrato on. Ooh. Come off exactly when those strings come off. Okay, this is real. This is proper being exposed. But I'm going to give it a go. So here's the last backing vocals. Okay.
The lonely nights. Ooh.
So that was okay.
The lonely nights. Ooh.
That's the second part. There's this age-old adage where people go, "Oh, to smother and reverb, it'll be all right." No, it won't. No, it doesn't work like that. If you're having to smother stuff in reverb, it means it was, and to cover up faults. There's just no point. We have the, the old phrase, "You can't polish it." We're on YouTube, of course, family viewing. Well, maybe not family viewing, but you can't polish one of those. So here we go. Second part.
Those lonely nights. Ooh.
Okay. The lonely nights.
The lonely nights. Ooh.
Okay.
The lonely nights. Ooh. The lonely nights.
Oh.
The lonely nights. The lonely nights. Ooh.
It sticks out like a sore thumb if you were to use Melodyne on pitch correction on this. And actually, I've only got the internal one that came with Logic Pro anyway, which is all right, but it really does clamp your vocals down. So I just got to get it right.
The lonely nights. Oh, the lonely nights. The lonely nights. Ooh.
Right, just a quick check through those backing vocals. I think they went all right. The major third is a little bit sharp on that second part down, so I'm going to do that again.
The lonely nights. Ooh.
Now that is a thing that violinists will get this because of the equal temperament thing. And it can make things sound really ugly if you're trying to sing absolutely a pure note that is on the piano. So at the moment, I went, ah, do, and that C was just too sharp.
Ooh.
I want to really err on the side of just underneath that.
The lonely nights. The lonely nights. The lonely night. Ooh. Lonely night.
Yep, I'm happy. Now what you can do, notes, timing. Timing is really, really important. Now, luckily, on Logic you can do crossfades. So you can kind of get away with it sometimes. Especially when you've got long notes. And if you do a long enough crossfade, you can make it so all of those notes end at once. It's always a problem where, on the original, it slows down at the end. But because I did it to a click track, I tried to slow down as much as I dared against that track, in order that it sort of gave that feeling of slowing down at the end. Okay, I've finished, I think. Now I'm just going to have a little listen through, just to make sure that that lead vocal is okay. I might actually end up doing it again, and do you know what? I think I'm going to do another version of the lead vocals before we finish, because I think I will get a better result. Now I've been working with this tune for 2.5 hours. I think that I could probably get a better vocal take down. So let's move that tom out of the way. This also gives me the opportunity to make sure that my recording level is right. The lonely nights, because I properly went a little bit heavy on that level. So let's get another camera angle, because I'm going to need to do that again for this. I've got new books to read. Let's check that camera angle. I've got new books to read. Also, I can read my iPad if it's if it's just slightly off centre. I've got new books to read. It just makes it a bit easier. So I've got new books to read. Just make sure that camera angle's right. I've got new books to read. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. Okay. I've got new books to read, but they... Yeah, that's good for me. So, I'm going to get that lead vocal now. I'm not going to get rid of it because I need to just refer to it. Okay, so I'm going to record that another track underneath this that is just the second take of my vocals, but I'm going to mute the other one while I do this. So I need my pop shield, wherever that is, there is. After all that setting up of the camera, I might have to just double check that that's going to work. I've got new books to read. I've got new books to read. You never know, I might be able to sound check the mic with a different phrase perhaps. So it's not just all about new books to read. I've got new books to read. Yeah, okay. So vocals take 2. I think it was bar 13 that I came in. Bar 12. Okay. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, no, baby. And the postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Oh, girl, help me make it through the night. Those are the wrong words, yes they are, yeah. Okay, so let's just have a quick check of the sound this time. That's looking much better. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of compression and reverb in the monitor also, so that I can, I've just got a bit of a better idea of what's going on in the main mix. Yeah. Right, this has pointed to a very serious issue in the fact that I was singing to the back of the microphone. Rule number 1, mistake number 1A, a schoolboy error of gargantuan proportions. I've got new books to read, that's better. Yay. It sounded very distant, so it's a good job I didn't complete the take and went, yeah, I love that take, yeah, it's amazing. So, vocals, second version, take 2. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you I just won't do. No, no, baby. And the postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Oh, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me through. Oh, the lonely nights. Yeah. When I'm on my job It's not too hard when I go home and I'm all alone. I'm by myself, baby, you heard me. You know you're my crutch. I need... Right, those violins are way too high. That's a shame, because it was going okay. But I did rush. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a look at that once again. There's not really any point. Lots of people say, oh, we're recording engineers or producers will say, oh, just go from the second verse. But for a tune like this, which is a story about being lonely, and you know, it's got to be dynamic. It's got to have that feeling, which sometimes you won't get from just just verses or words cobbled together as sentences. So, in a way, I'm not too worried about slight imperfections in sound or tuning. Obviously, I'm going to try and get it right, but I don't want to make this clinical. It's a blues tune, you know. So, just to err on the side of caution, I'm going to delete the vocal takes that I've done. Let's make sure it's not a violin part. I've got new books to... Oh, there he is with that phrase again. Got new books to read. Yeah, you have, yeah. I've got new books to read. Yeah, lots of new books to read. Okay, so here we go. I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, 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 baby. The postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me. Please help me. Through the lonely nights. Oh. When I'm on my job, oh, it's not too hard. But when I go home, I'm all alone. Hey, oh, what a shame. What a shame. Now, I'm going to go against my rules, and I'm going to do... When I'm on my job, I'm going to go with that second verse. I know you're thinking, well, he's been lecturing us about singing the whole song because it's a story. Well, yeah, but I was happy with that first verse. So I'm gonna go from the beginning of that second verse. So here's the second verse, main vocal, take 2. When I'm on my job, oh, it's not too hard. When I go home. See, what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm trying to copy the original vocal track, and I should not be doing that. When I go home, it's not too hard. When I go home, I'm all alone. I'm by myself, baby. You heard me. Okay.
when I'm on my job. It's not too hard. But when I go home and I'm all alone and I'm by myself, baby, you heard me. You know you're my crutch. I need your sweet touch. Then it gets to the night time again. When will it end? Oh, make it through the day. But oh, you don't know nothing about, oh, the lonely nights. Whoa, the lonely nights. Well, now, night, go away. Please hurry up, day. 'Cause my nightlight burns and I toss and turn. Oh, tell me, what would I see if I turn on TV? I don't know what to do. Lord knows I need me some you. Oh, I can make it through the day. Ooh, please help me through the lonely nights. Ooh.
Okay. There was a rushing of that word because my nightlight burns and I toss and turn. That third verse. Now, at this point, I've got the option of going back to verse 2 and doing that again, but then I've forgotten how I sung verse 1. So I'm going to create another track and I'm going to do it all again. Because I'm not overly happy with that. I've just got to take my time and get it right. So here we go. We're still not quite 3 hours, but I've just got to concentrate and get my act together. Okay, so here is the third take of the main vocal from the very beginning.
I've got new books to read.
I can do better than that. Leave the camera rolling. Okay, here we go. Take 2.
I've got new books to read.
Overemphasize the D there. I'm trying to be clear with the words. Okay, take 3. Here we go.
I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No.
Right. I'm trying too hard. That's my trouble. I'm trying to do all this twizzling about sort of and it's not working. I've just got to sing it as I think about it. New books to read, but they ain't what I need. This picture of you just won't do. Okay. Okay, take 4.
I've got new books to read.
Out of tune. There we go, take 5, I think.
I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. And this picture of you just won't do. No, no, baby. The postcards you send would never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, oh, please help me through the lonely night. Oh, when I'm on my job, oh, it's not too hard. But when I go home and I'm all alone and I'm by myself, baby, you heard me. You know you're my crutch. I need your sweet touch. Then it gets to the night time again. Lord, when it ends, oh, I can make it through the day. Oh, oh, please help me through. You don't know nothing about the lonely nights. Whoa. Well, now, night, go away. Please hurry up, day. 'Cause my nightlight burns and I'm all alone on a toss and turn. Tell me, what would I see if I turned on TV? I don't know what to do. Lord knows I need me some you. Oh, I can make it through the day. Please help me. Please help me through the lonely nights. Ooh.
I got away with it. Now, what happened there was I actually put in some extra words, but it's okay. It's all right. I went, please help me through. You don't know nothing about the lonely nights. I'm happy with that, I think. The next thing to do is to start mixing this and seeing if there's any things there that aren't really, that aren't helping. So I think that is the recording process done. There we go. So, time now for a bit of mixing. So, I'm going to play back the mix now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play it through the speakers. You'll hear the soundtrack now on your camera, which will... And you'll hear the exact soundtrack of what I'm doing while I'm mixing, so that you can hear how we're basically going to go through this. Now, I'll just take that out. So that's the main vocal part. I've got all my other parts in place. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's drums. 5 bass, 6 guitar, 7 vocals, 8 Hammond, 9 lead guitar. And 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I've got 16 things. Now, that was how many tracks we had back in 1971, 2. So, yeah, okay. That's kind of a good sign. That means I'm not overcooking things by adding lots and lots and lots of parts. So, here is the mix from the beginning. I'm going to put a little bit of reverb on that Hammond because it's a little bit direct at the moment. So. That's all right. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and listen to the bass and the drums on their own because I want to try and get the bass guitar and that kick drum to really gel nicely to make sure that bottom end is really solid. Oh, there's a bit of static-y stuff coming through somewhere. I think it might be on that bass track. That little sort of staticky things are happening in a different place every time I press play, which means it's not on the recording, it's somewhere else. I've got an issue somewhere. I've got an old mixing desk here which started making noises of its own, so it could be that. Okay, so I'm going to edit this out. After the recording, I'm going to go to the mixing. Okay, now I've finished recording, I'm going to do some mixing now. Now, what's going to happen is I've got to try and get this to work, this mix to work so that it's okay. Okay, so now I've finished recording, I'm going to start mixing this. Now, I've just got to sort of take a few sort of basic precautions first of all. One of which is to cut all the bass end on anything that has been mic'd up. So that means violins, for example, and the vocals. So as a rule of thumb, cut everything below about 100 Hertz. But with not too steep a cut-off, so you can still hear the body of things. It doesn't suddenly just cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that to all of my tracks that were mics. So that means my violins, my backing vocals, and my main vocal. Now what this does is it will give you a really good insight into the sort of low frequency content of your material. You don't want to have lots and lots of bass rumbling about unnecessarily. There's no point in that, because actually all it does is give you a sort of oh, let's copy that over. All it does is it makes it really muddy sounding, and you don't want that because you want the bass and the drums to be really clear. Now at the moment I've got the drums and the bass soloed. Now what that does is essentially to tighten up the bass drum and the bass guitar together. So I just put a little bit of compression on that bass drum. It's sounding nice actually, that drum. I don't want to tinker with it too much. I don't want to spend 3 hours on it and find you back where you started or it's worse. Now with bass guitar, you don't want too much of that ultra low end. You want sort of, you know, a couple of 100 hertz just to get the body out of it. Now, once you've got that, I'm going to start adding stuff. Okay, I've now got the drums and the bass and the guitar soloed. Next I'm going to add the Hammond organ, because I want the Hammond to sit at a really nice level that just doesn't make it over the top, but it really complements that guitar. Have that lead guitar as well. I might just go from the start with the solo guitar, make sure that's all right. Now, I want my cymbals to be a bit darker than that. At the moment, I'm sort of playing the hi-hat going duh, 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 duh. I might see about, now I say that I like drums really dry, I might just see if that cross stick snare sort of sound might benefit from just a tiny bit of reverb. Don't know, not sure, maybe. If you set a reverb, a good rule of thumb is to halve what you've got. Halve what you start with, or halve what you think is right, and just bring it to that half of that original level, and it will probably fit in your mix quite nicely. Take 5.
I've got new books to read, but they ain't what I need. But they ain't.
I'm getting some sort of staticky sort of sound from somewhere. I don't know where it's coming from. Luckily it's not on the recordings, but it does appear to be somewhere. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Still, never mind. Yeah, it's a little bit off-putting, but it'll have to do.
What I need, and this picture of you just won't do. No, no, baby. The postcards you send would never never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart. Girl, I can make it through the day.
Now, I need to compress the vocals a bit here because I'm doing I can make it through the day at the same time as well. Yeah! So I basically have to compress this so that it really does sort of wake those bottom vocals up.
When we're apart, girl, I can make it through the day. Oh, oh, please help me through the lonely nights.
Now those backing vocals, I'm going to need to compress those. Now, if you've got maybe 4 tracks on here, rather than putting a compressor on each channel, you can send them all out to what's called a bus. And if you do that, it means that you can compress just the mix, which means you're only using 1 compressor rather than 4. And on an old Mac like this, which is 11, nearly 12 years old now, it's, you know, I need to be kind to it in its old age and not give it too much to do. So I'm just going to set a bus up here now, and I'm also going to pan these backing vocals very, very slightly so that they're kind of spread a little bit. It just makes it easier to pick out individual notes. So let's have a look at that, see what happens with this. So here's just the backing vocals on their own. Let's have a look.
The lonely nights.
So I'm going to put a reverb on that. I'm also going to, I know I've cut 100 Hertz off these, but I want the backing vocals to be sort of a little bit more distant so that I could actually cut a little bit more bass off overall. Just to make them really sort of sound like secondary.
The lonely nights.
Could also darken them slightly.
Nights.
Let's see what happens with that. So I'll unsolo that, go back to the mix.
Please help me through the lonely nights. Oh.
That's better. They are background vocals now. So while I'm here, I'm just going to check the next backing vocals.
About the lonely nights. The lonely nights. Ooh.
Okay, now next I'm going to bring the strings in. Now the strings I want also to have a little bit of reverb and panning on them. Now I could send them to the same bus as the backing vocals, but I'm not going to because I'd like a slightly longer reverb on those strings just to make them sit in that mix. And I've also panned them ever so slightly, the middle part, the outer parts I've sent. Maybe I should have the bottom part that's a little bit more central and the top parts spread very slightly. And I'm going to send these to another bus, which I'm going to call bus 2. Create a track underneath that and then just listen to those strings separately. Now I know that there's no camera in front of these. There's no camera in front of these, in front of the computer here, but really what I'm doing is kind of applicable to any digital audio workstation. So really it's, instead of just following a mouse around, it's much easier to sort of hear the mix as it's unfolding. So here come the strings. Okay, let's see what happens if I stick them in.
I need your sweet touch. Then it gets to the night time again. Lord, when will it end? Oh, I can make it through the day. Oh, please help me through. You don't know nothing about the lonely nights.
Okay, so at the moment I've got the mix level in the studio here quite high. Don't really want that. I want to be able to hear this so that I can hear everything without being blasted out of existence. Now that Rhodes that I put down originally, actually I think I'm going to keep it. I put it down as just the chords, but it's actually helping.
Oh, it's not too hard. Help me through. You don't know nothing about the lonely nights. Whoa.
Now when I cut my video to this, sometimes what I do is I will, because I'm sort of, the mix is coming, it's certainly coming. I tend to try and cut to a rough mix. But if there's anything like, if I home in on one instrument, I think, oh, I can't hear that part. Very occasionally you can automate it slightly when you come back to the mix, excuse me, to make that part more visible on camera and the audio. So it's kind of 6 of one half a dozen of the other, really. What do I do? Do I put this on there and not cut a parting because it's not there, or do I come back and don't know? But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a mix of this.
Pain in my heart when we're apart, girl. I can make it through the day.
Now I'm going to create. Just look at the stereo track at the bottom of here, which is going to be my main output, because I obviously need this to be loud enough to be the sort of, to compete with other things on YouTube or wherever. Now this goes against the grain of what recording was originally, which was to produce a piece of music that didn't have to compete with something, you know, over the radio when you're sticking something on the radio. And that's why all of these mixes now are real super squashed and really loud. However, I need to make sure that it's loud enough that you don't have to turn the volume up to hear it. So what I do is I just put a multi-band compressor on. Now what that does is it compresses different parts of the frequency spectrum, so you can do your bass, your middle and your top end kind of separately, and then it adds together at the end. Now this, if you put everything through just a single band compressor, the bass drum might suddenly compress everything and then suddenly it won't work. Suddenly everything else will sort of duck with it. This way you can actually tweak various areas of the mix. So if I just go from the middle of the verse, I'm going to compress the mid-range a bit and you'll hear the difference.
Never, never mend the pain in my heart when we're apart, girl. I can make it through the day. Ooh. Oh, please help me through the lonely nights. Oh.
And then I stick a limiter on the output of that after the multiband compressor, just to smooth off any edges so that my level never goes above 0 dB full scale. So, I've got to find where the beginning point is now. 2, 2, 2, 3, 4. Bar 2, beat 3, beat 3. Let's try that. 2, 3, 3. Yeah, that's good. You always want to leave, 100, 200 milliseconds at the beginning of your recording before anything happens at all. Now this comes from the days of CD players where you need to have, where you had to have the CD tracking, and then the laser finds the place and then it opens the audio channels for your CD player. And if it did it all too quickly, or if you really were on the button with it, with the beginning of the track, sometimes it would cut the beginning of the track off. You don't want that. So just before I found my beginning point, the end point. What I've got to do with this now is to do fades at the end of the track, so I don't end up with any buzzing that suddenly stops. So that's the very end. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to automate that top note that I put in the lead vocals. I'm going to bring that down a bit. Just got to find out which track it is. Now, there we go. So I'm just going to put a little fade on that. And then put a fade on things like the bass guitar channel. Just make sure that it's... Now, as I said before, with those backing vocals, I've got to have a little look at those to try and work out if I can do a little crossfade to make them all absolutely end at the same time. Now, at the moment, I can see that the top part and the second to top part are actually later than the others. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of some of these, take a little bit of the file of the track, and I'm going to bring them all in slightly to match the shortest one that I've got. Now, really, what the best thing to do here is to have something where you've got a conductor or something, or a predetermined place that you are going to end all of your vocal parts. So if I go through now, actually my lead vocal part is now later than the others, because I was erring on the side of caution there and trying to get the lead vocal as long as possible to sort of smother up the early backing vocals. Now you can still hear a little bit of the bass there. What I want to do is to try and cut that bass at the end. You wouldn't need to do this if there was a conductor present. Now there's a track up here, I'm not sure what it is. Now there's a little bit of noise on the end of the drums as well, so I want to try and cut those. Make sure that we've got a nice cymbal tail but nothing else. So what I do is I'll fade inside the end of that vocal. Oh, there's a footstep somewhere. I don't know where that might be, whether it be in one of the lead, yes, it might be in one of the backing vocal parts, which I can now cut right where they end. And then put a little fade on there as well. Any ambience that's suddenly cut off, you will notice even if it's the end of a vocal part, the vocal might be just washing around the room ever so slightly, and if there's a sudden cut, you'll hear it. There's a little noise going on somewhere there. I can still hear a sound coming from somewhere, and I don't know where it's coming from. Ah, it's my violin parts. I didn't notice those at the top. Idiot. So what I've done is I've cut them where the fade fades to 0 underneath the very end of the backing vocals, so the fade itself is hidden in the strings. And there we go. Okay. It's worth getting this right, and then wait 4 seconds in case you're going to put this on iTunes. Otherwise, your next track will come in straight away. So there is my mix. So I can make it through the day, keep everything top quality. So I've got a 24-bit 44K. The Americans like 48. If you're mixing for TV, 48 is a very, very good idea because it's a direct sort of halving of the 96 kilohertz sample rate that you'd get on DVD, for example. So there we are. There is the end of the session, 3 hours and 15 minutes. I hope you've had fun watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and hope you like all my future stuff.